this episode, we take you through the process of buying a car in Costa Rica. Although this process may feel intimidating, purchasing a car was quite easy but required the right balance of research, planning, and intuition. The result for us was a new sense of freedom to travel throughout the country without the stress and costly fees that add up renting vehicles in Costa Rica. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe and hit that like button. Now, let's get into the adventure.
All right, so we are arriving at our appointment with a lawyer to go ahead and handle this transaction for this used vehicle. You need to have a lawyer involved in order to help process the Marchamo, which is like the annual taxes for the vehicle, which would be similar to registration in the US. And you also have the Riteve. So the Riteve is the annual inspection of the vehicle to make sure that it is up to standards and can actually operate on the road. So this is the vehicle right here. This is a 1999 Montero Sport. We'll be the proud owners of. Off, who was the proud owner of this vehicle for the last 6 years until we scooped it up. So now we have the latest addition to the free range squad. So our newest adventure mobile, a 1999 model Montero Sport.
Insight, reach out to your networks, meet people. You want to meet a mechanic that locals trust. You want to find a lawyer that people trust. What else?
Have a checklist. We had a comprehensive checklist, and although I would recommend having somebody with some mechanical acumen or knowledge, it's not absolutely essential. Anyway, we did have a used car checklist. Obviously the biggest danger is getting a lemon, something that's not going to work for you. But again, the first thing is just who are you getting the vehicle from? Is it somebody you met just through Facebook, or is it somebody you've met through somebody in your network? One of the board members at the school our kids are attending has been using this mechanic for the last so many years, and we reached out to the mechanic asking him if he had anybody who's selling a car that he's been servicing, and naturally he's been servicing this vehicle for the last 2.5 years and has all of the records on it, which is good to know any of the previous service that hasn't been taken care of. And most importantly, just having a conversation with the person who's selling it. Why are you selling it? What's your motivation for getting rid of it? And if you know anything about social science, just talking with somebody and having a conversation could lead to them just being open and honest with you, or you kind of getting a bad vibe from the person if they're obviously clearly lying about something. But there's some pride of ownership in this vehicle because, like we said, the previous owner was or is a mechanic, and so he did a lot of preventative maintenance on it and wasn't always just fixing problems.
Correct. We're debating whether or not we should wash the car because it's going to get dirty anyways, but it's kind of nice to have a clean car when you just bought it. But the process wasn't that hard. The lawyer was really easy. All we had to do was send him the license plate. He told us if it was a clean title. It cost about $250 to transfer the title into our names, which is actually not that bad. You're working with a lawyer here. You can't even do that in the US, spending an hour and a half with a lawyer that you can just WhatsApp. It's a pretty easy process, actually.
Thanks again for watching this episode of the Free Range Squad. So once you've identified a car you're ready to purchase, there's 4 main considerations that I'm going to go through to allow you to make this process as smooth as possible. Now, the first consideration in purchasing a car is understanding what the Marchamo is versus the Riteve. Marchamo and Riteve are indicated by 2 stickers that will be located on the front window or on the body of your vehicle. The Marchamo is the obligatory insurance that is required for all vehicles in Costa Rica. This includes the liability insurance for any accidental damage or injury for any motor vehicle accidents. This is required to be paid before December 31st every year and can be paid at any local bank or a variety of other local shops. Fortunately, with the Marchamo, you don't need to have any additional coverages because this is the national coverage that covers all motor vehicles in Costa Rica. The Riteve, on the other hand, is the annual vehicle inspection every vehicle must pass in order to operate safely in Costa Rica. The date that this is required is going to be unique to every single vehicle and will be indicated by the sticker on your window. Now, in order to complete the Riteve, you can go to a certified shop or taller in your local area, or you can have them actually take it in for you. Now, this requires an inspection which is going to go through a variety of mechanical tests of your vehicle to make sure it is safe to operate on these roads. Now, I have heard that this is a very challenging experience, and if you are not confident in speaking Spanish, this can be incredibly stressful. So take that into consideration when determining if you're going to complete this yourself or if you're going to have your local mechanic complete this process for you. Now, the second consideration I'm going to discuss is the test drive checklist. So number one, before you even get into inspecting the car, is having a conversation with the owner. Ask them questions about the history of the vehicle and primarily why they're actually selling the vehicle. Do they have any service records of the vehicle, and are there any major issues or accidents that the vehicle has had in its past that you should be aware of? This is a great time to use your intuition, and if you're feeling like the owner is being dishonest in any way, that is something that could raise a red flag and you want to be mindful of. Now, as you get into the visual inspection of the vehicle, the first thing you should check out is the body of the vehicle. Particularly here in Costa Rica, if you're close to the ocean, you want to be aware of any rust that the body may have. Rust on your vehicle is a chemical process, and once it begins, it's almost impossible to stop. So you want to make sure that there is no extensive rust damage on your vehicle. Secondly, you want to take a look at the wheels. Make sure that there is adequate tread on the wheels so that you won't have to be replacing the tires anytime soon. Make sure that the spare tire is on the vehicle and it as well has good pressure and good tread. Next, you're going to want to take a look at the interior. Not only just the visual inspection of the interior to make sure that it looks good in cosmetic condition, but the primary thing that I would be looking at here is the smell. If you smell any mold, that is a clear indication that there could be water damage in the vehicle, which can cause lots of problems down the road. Now, before you get into the test drive, you're going to want to take a look under the hood and see what the engine compartment looks like. Go ahead and take a look at the fluids to make sure that everything is at the adequate level, as well as visually inspecting to see if there are any signs of leaks or anything else that may be awry in the engine compartment. You also want to look for any corrosion that may be on the battery terminals, because this could indicate a very old battery or a battery that has not been properly maintained. Now, once you've gotten to the point where you're ready to take that initial test drive, the first thing you should be aware of is the sound of the engine as you turn on the ignition. First, you want to make sure that the battery is strong and the ignition and the starter turn over the engine relatively easily. And secondly, you want to be listening for the sounds of any knocking that may be coming from the engine. That could indicate that the oil level hasn't been properly managed and there could be some internal damage to the engine. Next, you want to take a look at any of the dashboard lights. Are there any of the check engine lights, the oil lights, any service lights, anything that could cause an alarm or raise any red flags? I highly recommend checking the operation of the air conditioner to make sure not only that it does turn on, but you want to make sure that it is blowing very cold, because if it isn't, that could be a sign that the system needs to be recharged. Before you even take off, you should check to make sure that there is adequate pressure on the brake pedals, and you also want to turn the steering wheel full lock to the right and to the left to ensure that the power steering is working effectively. If you're hearing any noises as you are making those turns, that could indicate that there could be some challenges or problems with your power steering system. Now, as you get into your test drive, you want to make sure that you start with a brake test. Make sure that you're checking the brakes, applying even pressure, as well as applying quick rapid pressure to see how the brakes perform. In addition, you also want to check the acceleration of the vehicle. Make sure you're listening to the sound of the engine as it shifts from one gear to the next. So whether it's an automatic transmission or a manual transmission, you want to make sure that it is shifting smoothly. So you can pay attention to the RPMs to make sure that everything looks adequate. And lastly, if your vehicle is equipped with 4x4, this is one of the most important things in a vehicle in Costa Rica, is having 4x4. You want to make sure you engage the 4x4 so that you can make sure that the transmission is shifting smoothly and that the 4x4 is fully engaged. That includes 4-wheel high and 4-wheel low. And if you're not sure with how any of these systems work, if the owner of the vehicle is with you, you can definitely have them make sure to illustrate how these systems work. A benefit for us is we had our mechanic go with us on our test drive, so we were able to ask questions along the way because we knew that he would be servicing the vehicle from the purchase point on. Now, once you have completed your test drive and you're confident that this is the vehicle for you, you are going to need to hire an attorney to process the bill of sale. This is required for any transaction of a vehicle in Costa Rica, and the price varies depending on the attorney and the location that you're in. The process for us took about an hour, and it cost $254 to complete this transaction. In addition to drafting the bill of sale or the purchase agreement, your attorney will also check to see if there are any liens on the vehicle, and they will also complete the transfer of ownership. And in our case, we didn't have a physical address when we purchased this vehicle, and our attorney served as the location where our registro would come as soon as that process was completed by the National Registry. One tip that we were not aware of when we purchased our vehicle is that Costa Rica has something called the National Consumer Commission, which has a 30-day guarantee, or what we would call in the States a lemon law. If there are any issues with your vehicle in the first 30 days, the previous owner of the vehicle is required to pay for any of those repairs or the total replacement of the vehicle. This is one of the most important parts of having an attorney, and making sure that if you do have any issues in those first 30 days that you file a claim with your attorney to get the process started. Now, the fourth consideration in purchasing a used car is the payment. Once you've gone through the process and you have a purchase agreement and you've worked with your lawyer, then you have to make the payment. Now, we transferred our money from a bank in the United States to a Costa Rican bank. Now, this process can take up to 7 days or more. One of the things that we had to address was that our bank contacted us because they wanted to make sure that this was not a fraudulent bank transfer. If we hadn't seen that email, this may have delayed the process of this transfer even longer. Before you settle on a final price, make sure that you negotiate with the seller any change in price based on your test drive and visual inspection. In our case, the air conditioner wasn't working properly, and we were able to negotiate a discount of $250 on the total price of the car in order to cover those repairs following the purchase. In total, we purchased our car for $5,600, which for a 20-year-old car with over 200,000 kilometers on it, in Costa Rica was not a bad deal. Our car was impeccable, and we had lots of service records that indicated the vehicle was well taken care of, and we knew that we were purchasing a car that was in great condition. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the 4 considerations that I would recommend in purchasing a used car here in Costa Rica. Now that we've owned the car for almost a year, one of the pro tips that I use in order to maintain all of my vehicles is I develop a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet does 2 things. One thing is that I always track the mileage of the vehicle. Every time we fill up the tank, I'm always calculating the miles per gallon and the miles per kilometer. In addition to the mileage, I'm also making sure that I record any maintenance on the vehicle with the mileage and the date. Any of those repairs, including the costs, I itemize and make sure I include as much detail as possible, because as I get up in age, some of these things you forget, and it's essential to be able to have those records. And most importantly, it's going to increase the value of your vehicle upon the possible sale of that vehicle to another buyer. In addition to maintaining our car regularly, I'm constantly changing the fluids. With an older vehicle, it's going to burn oil, so I'm making sure to add at least 1/4 to 1.5 quarts every month based on how many miles we're driving. Every time you get in your vehicle, it's a good idea to take a look at the wheels and the tire pressure and make sure that there is no visible damage or any other problems that may strand you out there on the road. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you drive slow. Costa Rica is a perfect place for you to slow down and enjoy the scenery. There's no need to rush from point A to point B, so I highly recommend you take it slow on these roads so that you can maintain your car and increase the longevity and its life. Here in Costa Rica, it's not about consumerism and buying a new car just because there's a new model out. It's about preserving these vehicles and keeping them on the road as long as humanly possible. Now, I wish you the best of luck in your used car purchase and hope that this video was useful for you. If you found any use or have any questions, I highly recommend that you go ahead and drop those in the comments below, and I'd love to hear from you and hear how your used car purchase went. So thanks again for joining us on this episode. But until our next adventure, pura vida.